Welcome to week 5 of Intro to the New Testament. I hope that you've been enjoying this as much as I have been. Last week, Acts, I said my favorite book. Paul, love Paul. Romans is probably my favorite letter of Paul's, although Ephesians comes right in there. And then, okay. Anyways, I wanted to say to you that I've been referring a lot in my own study and have been pulling out pieces for lectures from this book by N.T. Wright. You can see it. It's the New Testament in its world. I was going to assign this to you, but as you can see, it is a very big book, and would be, I think, a little confusing. But I'll tell you, if your interest is at all been piqued by our class, our studies, they're just beautiful pictures, and it brings emails that he received and had conversed with. It's incredible, and you can get an even larger version if you'd like to. That is made up of this and some more commentary on it. And if I had thought about it, I really thought I was going to assign this. And then as I got reading it, I realized I am not assigning this. So if I knew that I wasn't going to assign it, I would have gotten the other book one day. Okay, so I want to give you a little bit of background on Paul. Paul was born probably in Tarsus as a man named Saul. You know that because you've read the book of Acts. He was probably born, I don't know, it's in those very first years, a year or two of CE, AD. I still prefer as late as 10 AD. And we know that he died about the 60s, around in the 60s sometime, not the 1960s. Every time I say it, I think of that. He is a incredibly important figure. You know, I call him the greatest preacher, teacher, evangelist, and church planter that ever was. And he is such a model and really brought alive and into reality and practicality these teachings of Jesus, and even perhaps more than that, this fire for Jesus. If you think about it, the church of Jerusalem just kind of stayed there and petered out. Ooh, no pun intended there. But these other churches, the ones who kept reaching out, we know about those churches. And there are still communities there. He would have been fluent in Greek rhetoric. We know that he worked with concepts that were such that my Greek professor, one of my Greek professors, said, "I don't even think Paul knew what he was saying." And when you read him in the Greek, it's just these very extensive sentences. We might call them run-on sentences. He's searching and grasping for words, and I think about that. You know, they say mystical experiences are those for which you have no words. One's experience that you can't explain. I found that there are some experiences, I guess, that I've had that I just say, I know that sounds crazy. Have you ever said that when you've been trying to tell somebody something about Jesus or God or something you've heard, you know, that you experienced in church or something, and you'll say, I know that sounds crazy. Well, I think that's what Paul experienced, was a lot of this craziness, and he didn't have language to explain it, but he tried over and over and over again. See, I wanted to read something to you, and this comes out of, this comes out of a teaching companion to this, and it is not available for distribution. I have it in a PDF version, but I'm not able to distribute that, and I'm not sure that you're able to buy it. But I did want to share this. It's from that companion for teachers, professors, instructors, whatever. And this is from page 52. And he talks about here, and this is N.T. Wright. N.T. Wright, he goes by Tom. Tom Wright is just one of the greatest, most voluminous authors of and speakers on the New Testament. Wow, the New Testament, like that. Also, though, if you look at some of his lectures up there, if you do a search for him, you'll find it N.T. Wright, spelled with a W, Wright. Right. Anyways, what he writes. What he says here is he's talking a bit about Paul's um, Paul's writings, when he's where and whatnot. And I thought it might be fun in the when you're talking about your letter this week. See if you can place it within the context of the book of Acts. Something I said this letter was probably written here in this account that's in Acts. So see if you can draw, I don't know, um, some parallel, maybe not parallel, but if you can place it perhaps in the book of Acts. Okay. So he says, though, that in the first 12 or so years, or actually it's longer than that, in these first years after Paul's conversion, okay, Paul's converted at 33 AD. And if you take that conversion event, his first letter to the Galatians is written around 48 AD. So that's about 15 years. We really don't know what's been going on. I mean, we know that he's been had that conversion experience, right? And we know he spends some time with Barnabas, probably a good bit of time with Barnabas. And so this is what N.T. Wright says in trying to put together. He says these are called the tunnel, Tunnel, the tunnel years. You know, he was kind of underground, but he was coming out into the light. All right, he says it's often called the tunnel period because our knowledge about it is limited. We know that while still in Damascus, Paul visited Arabia, probably Mount Sinai, to discern his new path. Isn't that cool? He was a Jew, and so where would he go? Mount Sinai, to discern his path. Where was he supposed to go next? Can you hear Paul talking to God? Okay, God, now you've done this. All right, Jesus, now I get it. But where do you want me to go? What do you want me to do? What more do I need to learn? I mean, we see Paul as this pompous person, and that's who he was, right? He was a Pharisee. So what that is. So is it possible, though? I mean, he was a praying man. We know that he prayed. We know that he asked for big things, and big things happened for him. So maybe he did go do a little bit of praying up there on Mount Sinai. We know that he had to flee when he returned, probably around 36 AD. He visited Jerusalem and spent a decade in Syria and Cilicia, including his hometown of Tarsus, after which he joined the church of Antioch, where he became a leader and a teacher. After visiting Jerusalem to help relieve a famine, he and Barnabas were sent out as missionaries in Cyprus and southern Asia. When he returned, he had a conflict with Peter in Antioch over whether Jews and believing Gentiles could eat together, and also learned of a similar conflict in Galatia. He then wrote Galatians and went with Barnabas to Jerusalem to work out an agreement with the church leaders. We know that his evangelistic and church planting ministry lasted from about 50 to 57 AD. Okay, so I wanted you to kind of just get a picture of Paul, where what we see are these, but what's underneath him as a man? Well, there are 13 letters written by Paul here in the New Testament. And of those 13 letters, which starts, of course, with Galatians, as we said, there is some debate as to whether or not he wrote all of them. Sometimes I have to say, this may be something that's a little uncomfortable for you. So just know that this may cause a little bit of discomfort to say to you, all 13 letters attributed to Paul may not actually been written to Paul. Let me say which ones are not possibly. And these, okay, so those that are believed to have not been written are called Deutero, 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 like second Deutero, Paul, pseudo Paul. I've heard them called. We also call them the disputed letters. Then there are those letters that are authentic, that there is no doubt that they were written by Paul. Now, of those that are believed to not have been written by Paul, there are a couple, and that's Colossians and no, I'm sorry, I'm lying. Well, I could say that first. Okay, Colossians and Second Thessalonians. It's kind of a 50-50 split as to whether or not they were written by Paul. So Colossians and Second Thessalonians not as disputed, but the ones that are disputed, First and Second Timothy, Titus, Ephesians. I don't like that Ephesians may not have been written by Paul. Or some would say definitely was not written by Paul. Now, how did they know whether or not Paul wrote it? Because of the language, the way it was written, the language that's used, the following tracking, if you will, the way the letter, the flow of the letter, that's considered. When it comes to Ephesians, though, I do want to toss this out. Ephesians is a circular letter. It means it was written to the people in Ephesus, but it says, pass this around. It's a circular letter. It's meant to be shared, not written only for the Ephesians. And it's possible that just like playing telephone, that what goes from place to place, that there are some changes that go along. So maybe the same with Ephesians and different people, not that in telephone, that's going to be totally not what Paul said, hopefully, because you can corroborate that with his other letters. But in that transitioning, the person who's writing it, the scribe, is um, is modifying it a little bit. Perhaps is making commentary about it, although not writing in the sides, in the margins, but rather, just writing it kind of in. Oh, that, like, that's what I do when I edit. You never want me to edit your work because I say, oh yeah, they could say that better if they do that. Now, fortunately, we have things like email or Google Docs where we can be working in real time and the person can say, no way. I don't think the people that are writing down here are going back to Paul, who sometimes is in prison, and saying to Paul, I think this is what you were trying to say. Is it? We don't have that luxury. And until we find what we know for a fact is an earlier version of Ephesians, we only have what we have to go on. We know, let's see, what else did I want to say about that? Yeah, and the same for the other letters. It may or may not have been Paul who wrote them, of course, as I'm saying, but we know that scribes wrote some of his letters for him, that he's not the one who's writing. And it is possible that the change up could be scribal error or just, as the scribe, it's kind of like dictation. You're doing your best. You're listening and you're taking your little notes, and then then you come back and you're trying to put together things from your notes. It's not exactly working out really well. I can make all kinds of excuses, but guess what? There are some, I think at least one video that will hopefully try to explain that much better than I am struggling to do. We also know that there are some missing letters, that there are at least two, let me see, three missing letters. The first one is an earlier version of Ephesians. I think this is hilarious. But in Ephesians 3, chapter 3, verse 3, that may be disputed, there is a reference, Paul, I'm just going to go with it. Paul makes reference to his earlier letter, what he had written, had written to them before. So we believe that there is an earlier letter to the Ephesians. We know that there is a missing letter to the Laodiceans, Laodicea, right? Laodiceans. In Greek, that last C is actually a kappa, K, and so it's Laodiceans. part C. Um, Colossians chapter 4, verse 16 makes a reference to that. Again, here we are with is Colossians, is it real? Is it not real? I'm going to go with it is, and so we have a reference there to that letter. There's a reference to it in one of the codices as well. So there's no dispute that there is that earlier letter. There may also be an earlier letter or a third letter. I believe it's a third letter. I'd rather it say that way to the Corinthians. Is that right? Oh, you know what? You're probably going to have to find it because as soon as that comes out of my mouth, I'm knowing that that's not what I say. Yeah, it is Corinthians. Okay, confused myself for a minute there. So the Corinthians. Um, it is believed that First and Second Corinthians may be the mix of two letters. Some believe that First Corinthians is a mix of another letter, so that would suggest there was another letter. So there are people we've learned that are doing much more of this than I am. We are, if you're at all interested, you can go look at that. I know whoever is looking at those of you who are looking at First and Second Corinthians, you're definitely going to find more about that. I hope that you'll share that with us as well. That's all I have really for you. I'm not helping you much with these individual books, but you've got Aimer Plus. You've to work with. You've got your study Bibles. I know that you don't need me to say anything more. I did find this one from it's from a church in Africa, and it's Vacation Bible School. It's Paul's letters. It's a vacation Bible school. You'll see it there. I think it's down towards the bottom, and it's got vacation Bible school ideas. So I just thought that one, it was really cool, and to that it was from Church in Africa, and that might give us some ideas or thoughts, or let us see the way Christians are thinking and teaching in a different part of the world. Okay, it's going to be a great week. I look forward to seeing you on the forums. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.